because that in and of itself has become my cultural experience at every place that I have lived.
You're listening to I Teach Overseas podcast with your host, Daniel Mendez.
Welcome to the I Teach Overseas podcast. Whether you're currently teaching overseas or considering the idea, my mission for this podcast is to celebrate, educate, and entertain our international community. Join me as we discuss current issues and trends in international schools, as well as meet some amazing people from around the world. I've got a great episode for you today that includes a new segment that I hope you can contribute to, but more on that later. In this first segment, I interview one of the few women directors on our international circuit. In November, I got the opportunity to interview Robin Heslip, Director of ACS Abu Dhabi and a 31-year veteran of international education. Robin was at the Global Recruitment Fair in Dubai. If you haven't heard of this fair, you need to check it out. The last 2 years, GRC has held a traditional fair in Dubai. Registration is free for teachers. You can find out more at the grcfair.org. Next year's fair will be November 10th and 11th. Big thanks goes out to Craig Johnson, Mario Fishery, and the wonderful staff at the American School of Bombay, who have been the main organizers and work really hard to put on this truly global event. Before we begin the interview, here's the episode's I Teach Overseas tip. Our tip this podcast comes from Liz Asper, a lower primary grade 2 teacher from Hong Kong International School. When acclimatizing to a new country, spend some of your school breaks exploring where you live and resist the itch to travel every break. It will help you quickly connect and transition to your new home. Liz also recommends if you can make friends outside of school, do it. Non-teaching friends can help give you relief from school talk and keep your international school bubble in check. If you have an I Teach Overseas tip to share on this show, go to iTeachOverseas.com or send me an email at info@iteachoverseas.com. There is some background noise in this interview with Robin, but the lessons in her stories are priceless. You can follow along in the show notes by going to iTeachOverseas.com/104. This carpet connoisseur from Lacrosse, Wisconsin has been an educator in every region of the world, and she has some great words of advice for all of us. We pick up our conversation discussing her decision to retire from international education.
I actually didn't really start even thinking about that until this summer when I was back in my condo in Florida, and I watched this beautiful, beautiful sunrise, and I was thinking to myself, maybe it's time to come home. And it dawned on me right then. For 30 years, I've never referred to the United States as home. I've always referred to where I'm living as home. And so it was this thought process, oh my goodness, is it really time for me to return home? I've been in 6 different postings in 6 different regions of the world. No, I'm one of the very few people, I think, that has had that melange of experiences overseas. I taught in Wisconsin for 9 years, and then I went to Kinshasa, Zaire, and that dates me because now it's the Democratic Republic of Congo, and I was there for 2 years. I did go back to the States for 2 years to finish my PhD at University of Oregon. And then I knew within, I'd say, a month of me being back in the States that I would be back overseas as quickly as I possibly could.
This is Sean Shockett at Saigon South International School, and you're listening to I Teach Overseas podcast.
Back overseas, I was in Rabat, Morocco for my next journey. It is a place that remains in one's heart. Kinshasa was unique for what one would consider to be a hardship post. But Morocco was truly a step back in time. The Moroccan people are genteel and welcoming, and at the same time very elegant, and culture was rich. And so it was an experience that remained with me, and I always felt I left too soon. There became opportunities to go into, I was the curriculum coordinator, and I taught social studies, IB history, and social studies at the high school in Rabat. But then the director of curriculum positions opened up one year. And that led me to the International School of Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. So I was the director of curriculum assessment and professional development at ISKL. Professionally and learning-wise, it was probably the most stimulating experience I ever could have had. And shopping-wise, it was probably my most expensive experience I ever had, because I became very enamored with shopping, and it became my therapy, and especially carpets. Actually, when I was in Morocco, the first year I was there, I was in Ouarzazate, which is the desert region. And I was with a friend, and we were out on the edge of the Sahara, and Tuareg, Berber, blue man came riding up on a camel and said, "Oh, please, come to my home for tea." And so he was riding his camel, and we were able to drive on the road that was sand, packed sand, and we went into this beautiful, beautiful home. And we had a lovely dinner, and we had tea, and as I'm looking around, I see all of these carpets. And he could tell I was looking, and he said, "Would you like to see some carpets?" And I said, "Yes, I'd love to see carpets." I distinctly remember him just rolling the carpet out, one after another after another. And they were all tribal carpets, so it was very appealing, because there was a story behind why this carpet was woven, and it was it was made for actual use in a tent or in a home. And that began my journey of carpet shopping. And to this day, I distinctly remember that, because to this day I have this desire to have a room in my condo in Florida where I'd have my carpets piled. And when I miss being overseas, I will just roll out a carpet and have some mint tea and think about where I got that carpet and what that story was behind the carpet. Because that, in and of itself, has become my cultural experience at every place that I have lived.
I really hope you're enjoying this episode of I Teach Overseas. Let me know what you think by going to iTeachOverseas.com. If you could go back and tell yourself 30 years ago one piece of advice or something that you would have done maybe differently.
I don't know that I would have done anything differently.
Really?
I think when I went overseas, I never had really the thought of staying overseas. But Steve Kapner was the head of school in Kinshasa, and he said, when I was going back for a couple of years to do my doctorate, he said, "You'll be back." And I said, why do you say that? And he said, "It's in your eyes. I can see it in your eyes that you will be back. You're the kind of person that will be successful no matter where you are overseas." So I think that that's why every time I made a move, it was to something very, very different. So after Kuala Lumpur, I went to Buenos Aires, Argentina. I was the high school principal at Lincoln, the American International School of Buenos Aires. And then from Buenos Aires, I went to Zagreb, Croatia. And then this last time I went out, I was shortlisted at Rabat, Morocco, ISKL at Kuala Lumpur, in Saigon South, and ACS, Abu Dhabi. And consciously, I made a decision after I had been on the campus at ACS and met the students were really why it became so appealing to go to ACS. But there was another factor. I had never been in the Middle East. I've been in North America, South America, Africa, Sub-Saharan, Northern Africa, Europe, Asia, and now the Middle East. And so I think back to when Steve Kapner said it's in your eyes. And Bob Sills always said when I was in Rabat, he was the one that encouraged me to get into administration. And I resisted it in every way, shape, and form I could until finally I said, okay, this is my path. And I went on that path.
I know the real reason why you're here.
Why is that?
Carpet shopping.
It is. I go to Sharjah to the Blue Souk. I'm leading trips there. You know, it's become my thing.
Well, thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Dan.
Robin was so much fun to interview that I could have asked her so much more, but her busy director job kept us from learning more about her experiences overseas. Maybe one day soon we can visit her in Florida, watch a sunset, and drink some mint tea and share some more stories. Even if you're new to international teaching, you probably realize that international educators are some of the most talented people you will meet, both inside and outside the classroom. In this next segment, I'm calling on all of our creative colleagues to send me their talents. Andy DesRoches is one of those fascinating and talented individuals. Andy has spent 15 plus years traveling the world with his wife, Rebecca. This former Baptist minister from Eastern Canada has spent time in Portugal, Mozambique, and Kenya. Andy began his world history teaching career in Saudi Arabia and currently works at the American School of Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. When he's not teaching, you can find Andy playing the guitar bass in school musicals or writing his own music. Here is Andy playing the guitar.
What's the good of speaking when no one wants to hear? What's the good of hearing when there's nothing you can share? Tell me, what's the good of sharing when no one will receive? Tell me, what's the good for you and me? What's the good of being light when darkness is preferred? What's the good of living truth when lies are not discerned? Tell me, what's the good of sharing when no one will receive? Tell me, what's the good for you and me? 10 lepers healed, only one gives thanks. 10 commandments spoken like some joker's prank. Why do you call me good when the good is plain to see? Tell me, what's the good for you and me? What's the good of crying when tears are not enough? What's the good of dying when we live with too much stuff? Tell me, what's the good of sharing when doubters won't believe? Tell me, what's the good for you and me? What's the good of owning guns when the spirit is at war? What's the good of knocking when they're blown away the door? Tell me, what's the good of sharing when doubters won't believe? Tell me, what's the good for you and me? 3 days in a fish can leave you praying for your life. 3 days in a tomb can fill your body full of light. Why do you call me good when the good is plain to see? Tell me, what's the good for you and me? of sharing when no one will receive? Tell me what's the good for you and me? What's the good for you and me? Tell me what's the good for you and me?
I'm Daniel Mendez from I Teach Overseas podcast. Thanks for listening.